this section, we'll be looking at creating a simplified fluid volume without extracting volumes or doing outer air enclosures. I'm going to start off by opening up this electronics box. Now in this particular model, we might want to look at the fluid inside this electronics box. However, you can see that there's no top and there's no case for it. But more important than that, in a lot of electronics boxes and sheet metal components, those gaps and clearances at all the corners that can make it really difficult to extract a fluid volume. You notice that all these corners, there's gaps, there's small holes, faces aren't meeting up against each other. It's going to take a lot of time to make that watertight. So instead, in a lot of these types of situations, let's imagine that we don't have an enclosure that's there. We simply want to make the rough shape of the box itself, which is going to be a cube, and then subtract these components from it. So what we can do is start off and we'll make a new component. So I'll right-click and make a new component. This is going to make an empty component, and I'll call this fluid. Now you'll notice that this is now bold, and everything else became grayed out. If you click pull, you'll notice that all of our other components are inactive. What it's doing is it's letting me build a new solid or new component from scratch. So what I want to do is click the sketch tool. So I'll sketch a rectangle, and I'll choose where I want to sketch the rectangle. I'm going to sketch a rectangle on the bottom face of the enclosure. So I'm going to click on this bottom face here and sketch a rectangle. So now I can snap to the geometry on the model. So I can snap from one corner all the way to the other corner. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to purposely make this short to show you something. So let's say I just sketch it here instead of snapping all the way to the other side. If I click pull, inside this fluid container will be this surface. I can click on it and thicken it and pull it up into a solid that's there. Now what I want to show you is this. I have the walls that are marking the inside of this body, where it should be. So I can take one face and go up to this wall. So even though I didn't sketch it to be exactly in that location, I can still easily take one face. Notice up to is also in our mini toolbar, up to the back face. So you can make sure that it's going to fit nicely into the model. Even grabbing the top and going up to the top of the box that we want. So without making any precise measurements, I have this inner box, the correct size, and it's taking into account all of these openings and these extra areas that I would have to cover up anyway. So now I can get rid of the enclosure that's there. Now what I find is really helpful is when I start subtracting these from the model, first I'm going to activate the top level assembly. So I'm going to activate the electronics box. So I'm going to be cutting away with all of our components at the same time. But I'm going to select on the solid here, and I'm going to change its color. Just a preference of mine, but I like to make these blue. And also in this mini toolbar, I like to change the opacity to transparent. Now, color and transparency is also located under the display tab, so you can change the color of parts. And if you select on a body, you can also change the graphic style. So you can change it from transparent to opaque. Now that I have this solid created, this fluid, the next thing I need to do is subtract things from it. So I'm going to use the Combine tool to do this. Click the target object. Which solid do we want to cut? We want to cut this fluid, and I want to cut it with these enclosures, or with this power supply. Notice because these are components, it's going to cut with both of them at the same time. And one option under Combine that I like is Keep Cutter. If we want to keep this cutter around, maybe use it again, Keep Cutter is a great option to have on. If I never need these solids ever again, I'm going to turn Keep Cutter off. What that's going to do is as soon as I choose these as my cutter, it removes them from the model, and you can see as it subtracts these areas away from the model. And the last tool guide says click to remove region. Click once, click again to remove those regions from the body. We'll see it one more time when I cut with our PCB. I'm going to click in white space to start over again. Click the target object, which is the blue. Click to select a cutter. So what it's doing, just so you can see it, are these solids that are inside this PCB. As I choose this, it automatically cuts them, subtracts those solids from our PCB, and creates two new solids in this fluid domain. We have our one larger outer solid, and we have these two solids which are inside here. Now it's still saying click to remove regions, and if I want to just box select those to remove them, I can make a big box around them and remove both of those solids at the same time. Now the last thing we're going to look at are these fans. I want to subtract these fans from the model, but in their state right now they're a little bit too complex. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on just one fan at a time. I'm going to expand our fan components, right click on fan, and open component. Now, what's unique about this and what I want to show you is that I'm going to drag fan, this component, and notice I can drag it up and drop it and lock it onto this side half. These components are all instances of each other, so you can see it. If you make a change to one of these bodies here, so if I pull on this, notice on all of the other bodies in the assembly they all change. This is what an instance means. As I change one of them, they all change at the same time. So for example, I'm going to use the same type of simplified representation here as I did to make this simplified representation. So in this fan component, I'll right click, make a new component, and call it simplified rep. So what I'm going to do is sketch a rectangle, choose the face I want to sketch on, and just like before, I'm going to start to draw my rectangle. Notice as soon as I draw a rectangle here, a rectangle gets drawn in all of our components that are the fan components. As soon as I hit pull, I have a surface in all of them. As soon as I pull this into a solid, I have a solid representation for it. So I'm just going to pull this up to the other side. So it's a really fast way to make all of these simplified representations at the same time. You'll notice that even if I delete now this blue fan solid, that also gets deleted from all of the fan components that are there. This is just like taking the box or the boundary around this component, and whatever change I make changes in all of the other ones. So now if I go back to my assembly, if I cut with combine, choose the solid, choose the object I want to cut away with, I can cut all of those at the same time and box select to remove those regions. So now we have a simplified representation by removing all of these solids from this simple solid we made. Hope you've seen how you can make a quick solid to represent a fluid, and if there are components inside which need to be subtracted, you can just remove them with the combine tool one at a time. Thank you for watching.